Well, hello. I wanted to offer a little Bladder 101. Now, this is truly going to be 101. I think that I could probably do 10 of these videos and still barely scratch the surface, but there's a few take-home messages that I want you all out there to understand and kind of get to know about the bladder, because so many people, women especially, have very challenging relationships with their bladder. Maybe you struggle with leakage, like you sneeze, cough, laugh, move, jump, like you're living your life and you don't trust your bladder because it leaks. And you're like, now I have to carry extra pairs of pants or underwear or pads. And it's really disruptive and annoying, right? Maybe you're somebody that you feel like you have to pee all the time, and it's really disruptive in terms of your work. Like you can't always go when you want to, but you're like, oh my gosh, I have to go. And then inevitably you sit down and there's like barely any urine in there. Like you pee for like 5 seconds and you're just like, what's up with that? I felt like I had to go, but it doesn't seem like I actually had to. So there's like a mismatch in the bladder signaling and the bladder's actual capacity of holding urine. Maybe you have pain, and maybe you're one of the people that you have a history of UTIs, but inevitably you go in because you have pain. You go into the doctor and you're just like, I swear I have a UTI, and they do some tests and you don't, and you don't have a bladder infection. There's no infection, and you're just like, but it still hurts, it hurts to pee, or hurts to even hold urine, and it just feels like sandpaper. It feels raw and it's very uncomfortable. So if any of that's you, here's some take-home messages. So number one, the bladder is very intimately connected with your body's nervous system. Now I'm going to do a whole separate video on the nervous system. I could probably do 100 of them. It's a very divinely designed system, as all systems of the body are, but the bladder and the nervous system go hand in hand. So this is why when we take medications for the bladder, and they might help a little bit, but they don't help all the way, it's because those medications might not be doing much for the actual nervous system itself. And if we're working in a toxic job, or we're in a toxic relationship, or we've just moved to a new town and we don't have a community yet, and we're just feeling really discombobulated, those scenarios can continually trigger the bladder, where certain medications or even certain herbal remedies might not get kind of underneath it, because the trigger is a job or another human or a community you live in, or whatever. So the bladder is so intimately connected with your body's brain and nervous system that if it doesn't feel safe, and if it's always kind of in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn mode, or it's just going, it's going to continue in these kind of patterns of leakage, pain, or urgency. So one thing to kind of consider if you're struggling with any symptoms of the bladder that you're just like, oh my gosh, this is ever going to go away, is to do a little audit of like, how's my life feeling? How's it actually feeling? If there are certain things I could change, what would they be? If there are things that are out of my control, what are they? And what are the things that are within my control? So it really is powerful to do a little audit of life, of like, at what point did my bladder really start to wave the white flag, and the symptom, whether it's leakage, urgency, or pain, when did that actually start? And maybe it was 20 years ago, right? When you had your first child, and that was so topsy-turvy, and your bladder never recovered, because then you had another kiddo, and then there were job changes and all these things. So the bladder is so intimately and oftentimes subconsciously connected to the body's nervous system that it's really important to have practices that support both the bladder and even the pelvic tissues. My pelvis is a little deconstructed right now, but you can go back and watch the pelvic video, because the pelvic floor muscles, little side note, they will subconsciously clench when there's stress, right? Any type of stress, physical stress. Maybe you work out, you're training for a marathon, and suddenly you're like, I'm leaking, what is going on? Or you started weight training and you're just like, oh my gosh, it's like I have to wear pads again because I'm leaking and I don't know what's going on. These muscles in the pelvic bowl will subconsciously clench if there's physical stress, like exercise, or even just physically you feel stressed, emotional stress, energetic stress, environmental stressors. Like there's a lot that could kind of start to become out of balance in the muscles, in the lymphatic system, in the nervous system. The hormonal system, yes. So it's not just aging, right? So, all that just to say is that there are all these systems of the body that we get to kind of do a little check-in and say, okay, what's going on from a whole kind of ecosystem in your body? How are these systems maybe reacting to what's going on in life? How can we bring them back into balance using breath and light mobility and maybe certain herbal support, maybe medications? Medications have a time and place, but so many times, we have to kind of get this holistic picture so that all of the tissues and the body systems can all receive that support, right? And kind of do their work to help to sort of right the ship, so to speak, or bring the body into some semblance of balance. And ultimately, if you've been struggling with symptoms for a long time, and it's not just age, it's not just, oh, you're a woman, or oh, you had kids and that's just how it is, I would not take those as answers. Ultimately, your body as a human wants to heal. It wants to be in balance. It has natural mechanisms to do that. It's just we, as the living, breathing human, get to, understand how we can guide our bodies back into balance. And the bladder is no different. So that should be good news, hopefully, if you've been struggling with any type of pain, leakage, or urgency for a long time, and you have received treatments for it, or you've been on medication, and you're like, it's not working, or it worked a little bit for a little while, but I still have these issues. There's always more than what meets the eye to unfold. And so yeah, there's hope. There's hope. There's hope. And no two people course through this sort of healing journey of the bladder in the same way, because everybody's triggers and everybody's lives are different, right? So I think that's the important piece, is to kind of understand what's going on in the individual's body as well as the individual's life, and then discern, okay, what are the practices that we can kind of weave into life that will really help the body start to naturally balance itself. So the bladder is definitely an organ that's a Goldilocks organ. It likes kind of the semblance of balance. When life is not in balance and it's out of whack and we're going and we're stressed and we're anxious and we're afraid and we're up at night kind of toiling, the bladder is going to be one of the main organs that signals the kind of the white flag going, help, which is a good thing, right? It's a good thing, because a lot of times if one organ is signaling that, that means other organs are also probably in need of a little bit of support in TLC. So bladder is very intimately connected with the body's stress response, or in other words, the nervous system, which I'll do another video on that because that's a whole different topic. And there's stuff we can do. So don't think that the bladder is always going to be in a state of complete turmoil. There are things that we can do, and it just takes a little bit of creativity and patience. Sorry, you have to be patient. But inevitably we can really guide the bladder back into balance, and all of the tissues that ultimately support the bladder, like the pelvic tissues, or even the lymphatic system, the nervous system. And the last little tidbit or bit of good news is that a lot of times one practice works for all of these systems. So if you go back and watch the chamber breathing video, I talk about breathing into kind of the heart space, the upper chamber, or the belly space, the lower chamber, which that bladder lives right down in this little neck of the woods. Anytime that we really send that breath into those chambers and all the way down into, maybe where the bowl of the pelvis lives, which is where the bladder lives. Anytime we send the breath, we reoxygenate those areas, we kind of calm, we ground, we recenter, and that is the gift that keeps on giving. So there's a lot of simple practices that we can do, whether it's breathing or gentle mobility, gentle grounding practices, hydration. And there are certain herbal remedies that are very powerful and very specific to the bladder, but also the nervous system and lymphatic system. So this is where it gets really fun. On that note, I'm starting to go into Bladder 201, so I'm going to keep it at 101, but enjoy maybe doing a little bit of audit of like, how's my bladder doing? What is it maybe requesting? And let me know if you have any questions, or if you need a little one-on-one support, totally here. Or drop comments, questions below, and we can communicate there. All right, we'll see you in the next video.